Welcome to the Dirty Verdict Podcast, where your hosts, trial lawyers Kyle Herbert and Bill Ogden, and mediator Peter Taff, talk with interesting lawyers and break down recent legal news in detail. Here's Kyle, Bill, and Peter.
All right, welcome back to another edition of the Dirty Verdict Podcast. I am full-time mediator Peter Taff.
I'm full-time litigator Kyle Herbert, here with our regular co-host, Bill Bob Ogden.
National award-winning litigator. Yes, you don't have to say that, Kyle.
Bill wasn't here last time because he was jet-setting all over the country, winning major awards. We'll get into that a little bit later. But I figured something out over the last week. I don't know if you guys knew this. I think the Dirty Verdict might be the world's only legal podcast. Did you know that?
Really? No, I didn't know that.
I think everybody else is just imitators. But I don't know. I looked on a lot of these platforms. I couldn't find anything. Anyways, we have the incredible opportunity to interview one of my favorite lawyers, to be totally honest. Tommy Fibich, right from here in Houston, Texas. A man who is incredibly kind and generous with his time, been a mentor to me and a lot of other attorneys, and I'm just pleased as punch to welcome him in. Tommy Fibich, welcome to the Dirty Verdict.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Tommy, we wanted to start a little bit with your background. Where are you from?
Well, I've grown up primarily in Houston. When I was in high school, my dad moved to San Antonio, so I graduated from high school there, went to the University of Texas, and here I am.
Our guest 2 weeks ago was Kent Schaefer. Were you guys at UT at the same time?
I know Kent, but I don't think we knew each other then.
Okay. What'd you study at UT? Why'd you end up there?
Well, that's a good question. It was close to San Antonio, and my parents could afford it. I don't know really well. That's a good question. I had never traveled very much when I graduated from high school. The farthest north I'd been when I graduated from college was the Cotton Bowl. The farthest south was Laredo, and the farthest west was the Ramblin' Rose nightclub, Atlanta. I just, so I didn't know there was a world out there. So the University of Texas being, 40 miles away or 60 miles away was a great choice for me.
And what'd you study there?
I got a degree in finance. Originally, I was in accounting until I took cost accounting. And then I realized real quickly I was not going to be an accountant and decided I would change my major.
It's kind of a surprising leap from math, full-time math accounting to the law. You don't normally see that as a path.
Yeah, that's true. There's not a lot of lawyers that I know that have math as a background, although I think engineering is a particularly good background for,
Interestingly enough, I think Mr. Schaefer told us he was a drama major. He was a fine arts drama major.
I think, honestly, drama and probably English would be two solid ones.
Yeah, for the profession.
Yeah.
So what'd you do after college? Did you go right into the law business?
Well, no. When I graduated in 1970, there was a war going on, another useless, worthless war that we got into and couldn't get out of. So I had to join the Army Reserves, and so I went to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and then to Fort Benjamin Harrison in Indiana, and was out for about 8 months, then came back and started law school the next year.
Sounds like you didn't have any bone spurs.
No. No, I didn't.
What made you decide on law school?
Well, that's an interesting story that some people tell me I shouldn't tell, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Please do.
That's what we're here for.
We can cut this out in post.
We won't, but we can.
So, went to high school in Lee. We would all go to Port Aransas. So one of my rich friends, whose dad was a doctor, had a GTO, yellow GTO convertible. So we're down there drinking beer when we shouldn't have been and driving down the beach, see a beach house on fire. So we run up to it, see if there's anything we could do. The flames were overwhelming it. So we then ran, and this was before cell phones. We had what some of you may know, we used to call a telephone booth. So we got to the telephone booth, called the fire department. When we got back to the house, they said, they're the ones that ran. So I was with two friends. They separated us. The police did just as you have seen on TV. Browbeat us, separated us. I remember the good guy, bad guy. The guy that was dealing with me, was a smoker, blowing smoke in my face, lying up here, and I didn't want to call my parents. I'd rather have gotten an electric chair for arson than call my dad. But eventually, I'd had enough of it. I started calling my dad, and he came down and walked in with a lawyer. Lawyer said, "Come on, let's go." And that helped me so much. I said, if I can ever do what he did in any way, that's what I want to do. So that's what spurred me on to be a lawyer.
An attempted arson. Okay.
Your criminal career was cut very short. Why did you burn that house down?
We were just drunk and jealous. So
I've been there.
Where'd you go to law school?
I went to University of Houston. I had been accepted at Texas, but when I got out of my basic training in the Army, I didn't realize I had to apply, and by the time I applied, it was too late. But I got into University of Houston, and it was my thought that I would transfer back to Texas after my first year. But I had started working for a personal injury firm here, Clarkin, and I said, no, I'm staying here.
What's the name of the firm?
Brown and Hayden. It's not around anymore.
What kind of work they have you do?
Well, then I was a law clerk, but, they really gave me a lot of authority. And my job was also to file things. And back then we had a docket clerk, and you would go in and they rotated who they assigned the cases to. So if you didn't want the judge that was up, you could wait and then wait till a good judge came up and did take that one. So I would spend a lot of time at the courthouse. And then I realized that I was learning a lot, so I would go watch the really good lawyers. And that was such a learning experience back then because the Houston lawyers were so great.
Still are.
Still are, absolutely.
I mean, you look at verdicts and MDLs and big cases all over, and Houston's got ties to them somewhere.
There's no doubt about it.
Who were some of the lawyers? Curiosity.
George Pletcher was one. His nickname was the Babyface Bandit, and my God, was he good. Joe Jamel, of course, was great. Wayne Fisher was solid. I mean, he looked like a Baptist preacher, always with a blue suit. And so I would go up and watch him, and I really liked watching Jamel. He was special.
I don't think anybody will disagree with that.
One day I was up there and watching him, and I'd been there several days, and he came over and said, "What's your interest in this case?" And I said the exact words he wanted to hear. I said, "You."
Yep.
And so we became friends, and we were friends up until the time he passed away, and I got to see Joe do a lot of stuff.
Was it a ton of comp cases back
Oh,
then?
yeah, Peter. I mean, it was the greatest thing in the world because the cases were easy. You didn't have to have an expert, typically. The only issue was whether they were in a course and scope and whether the extent of their damage and injury. And, the first case I tried it against John Binsky. John was number one in my law school class. I won, and he said it was the low part of his life for me to beat him. But it was exciting. I won $9,000. Our fees were capped at 25%. So I made about $1,600 and thought I'd jumped over the moon.
And that was, would those be jury trials?
Oh, yeah. All of them were jury trials. And, there were fun cases. There were easy cases to try. You didn't have to, do a lot other than know your file, call your client, and that was kind of it.
Like typically one day trial?
No, it typically would take 2 to 3. But, and I'll tell you, one of the first cases that I tried, I was helping Mike LeBron, my partner, and Mike said, "Hey, our client is real uneducated. He doesn't speak very well. He's intimidated. So I want you to get him ready. And if you will get him to answer these 20 questions, I can put on the rest of the case through other witnesses. But I got to get these 20 questions." So I would read him the question, read him the answer, then go back by, ask him the question, have him give you back the answer. So finally, it's time to put him on, and Mike says, "Is he ready?" I said, yes. But I knew when he was walking to the stand that we might have a problem, but I wasn't ready for this one. I had told him, "Look, don't be intimidated. Speak up." So Mike said, "State your name for the record." And he said, "Monroe, Louisiana." And Mike said, "Mr. Wembley, you're not listening to my question. State your name for the record." He said, "Just about all my life." And Mike said, I said, you got to go to question 4. We got to catch up. And
Skip.
so anyway, we were in front of Red James. He was an Irish, red-faced, great judge. And he couldn't quit laughing the whole rest of the trial. And so anytime I'd go to the courthouse after that and see him, he'd say, well, it's Monroe, Louisiana. But that was a cop case, and we just had a lot of fun trying them.
Sounds like y'all did. I don't get to enjoy those anymore.
So what was your first job out of law school?
Well, I went to work for a law firm, Bottom Carrington Fox, and was there until I started my own firm.
More PI work?
Yeah, I mean, it started out I wanted to do PI, and that's primarily what I did, but they had some big clients. I ended up doing some commercial litigation, which, I like, but it's just not as fun as representing individuals.
You like it?
I did, I really did, but...
That was before e-discovery.
Oh, yeah.
As I'd say, now it's a monster.
So how long were you there before you decided to hang out your own shingle?
Kyle, probably, I was there too long. I should have done it earlier. The biggest mistake I made was not starting my own firm, but I was probably there 15 years.
So what year was that when you got out of school?
2005.
No, got out of school.
I know. Just kidding.
Oh, sorry.
Law school, 1994.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, I mean, so, next year it will be my 50th year in the practice. And so I've seen a lot. I've seen a whole lot, and it's changed so dramatically that it's hard for me to even envision where we are as a practice today, particularly the personal injury practice. When I started, all judges were men. All judges were white. We didn't have a Hispanic judge. You could smoke in the courtroom, and thank God we don't have that anymore. But, that's kind of where it started out, and look at where we are today.
Which one thing, when I was probably a law clerk, the courthouse, like the files, there's a bunch of file cabinets in the hallways that were just like packed to the brim. And if you wanted to go see what was going on in a case, you'd go to that file cabinet, find out where the case was and pull it out. And they just have to trust that you would, if you copied something at the, Xerox machine that was probably as big as this room, that you would put it back in the right place.
Or not in the right place.
Yeah, right.
What about defense?
Exactly.
But no, that ship has sailed. It's a different world.
Yeah.
They're entirely.
So why'd you decide to go out on your own?
Oh, gosh. As I indicated, I did primarily contingent fee litigation. The rest of the firm did hourly fee litigation, and the more money I made, the more jealous they got. They'd say, Fibich has got a case, he's going to make money. I mean, he's going to make a $500,000 fee. And do you know how many years I have to work billing by the hour to make that? He shouldn't get credit for that. And I heard that one too many times and said, okay, y'all don't need me. I'll go do something else.
I bet they regretted it.
I bet they did. And the firm fell apart. I might say that too.
There.
So who'd you start up with?
Tanner Garth was a young lawyer that I had worked with. We had won a couple of cases together, and I got to give him credit. He really encouraged me. He said, hey, it's time for us to go do this. And I was thinking about that and who I should take, because I really, I think, could have taken anybody I would ask. And I was looking at a file, and in the file, paper file, ACO Faster's real file. And there were some letters from clients about things he had done for them, outside of practice of law, to give them money for something or to give them Christmas presents or whatever. And I realized that he was a good person, and that was really important to me. And that's why Tanner and I started.
How long did that last?
I'm sorry?
How long did you guys stay together?
We were probably together, 12 years, 10 or 12 years.
And then what next?
Well, I don't know. Mike LeBron, my old partner, my old friend, came in, my mentor, and we were off and running.
So I like to pretend that these were a Christmas gift, but I might have stolen these.
These were Christmas party gifts. You're right.
All right.
And the reason that we have these is
to get invited.
You would ask. is that everybody needs coasters. That's what the party planner told me. And she said, we're going to make these really great coasters with the hair on them, the fur. And so I fell for it and spent a whole lot of money for people to have these on their tables in their office.
Well, these four at least have survived.
So this we're looking at is Fibich, Hampton, Liebran, Briggs, and Josephson. So is Hartley still?
Hartley is still practicing law. He was a partner of mine and loved being with him, and but he's still practicing law. He's living in New Mexico most of the time, but Hartley's good.
Yep, yeah, for sure. Former, what was he, a state bar president or TTLA president?
TTLA president.
Yeah,
and a great one when we needed a good one.
So there's been various iterations of the firm, but you've been the constant heartbeat.
Yeah, I mean, when I left Bonham, Carrington, Fox, as I was telling Kyle, it wasn't acrimonious, but there was some resentment over the money that I was making, and so it was time for me to leave. And like I said, I should have done it sooner.
Yeah, and so what year was that, you think?
That would have been 87.
Great year.
So that is
A lot of great minds were born that year.
yeah. So at that time, starting your own practice, I would guess that would be kind of similar to starting your own practice now, as far as getting office space, figuring out which files you're taking.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would say, Peter, is it was a lot easier to get business then. We didn't have advertising, so that the good lawyers got the business, and that was rapidly changed when we got the internet. I mean, before, lawyers would call you and say, "Can I send you a case?" And then you would sell the case and give them a check. They'd come take the whole firm out for lunch. I mean, they really appreciated the work you did. And they realized that the lawyers like Jim Perdue and people like that, George Pletcher, they did such a great job. And so the better lawyers got the cases. And today it's a fight among a lot of people that advertise and that don't have the experience that I think lawyers had at the time I started. So it really helped me a lot.
So that was more, I mean, it happens now, but more common for lawyers that maybe didn't go try cases at the level that y'all did to just refer them right off.
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, it's changed so dramatically. I mean, we hear these big verdicts today, but, in the 70s, there hadn't been $1 million verdict. And I don't remember when it was, but then we started getting $1 million verdicts. Now you get all these big verdicts. So there's much more attention trying to get cases and not refer them or to hold on to them.
So, Tommy, you've been kind enough over the years to give me all kinds of advice on everything from firm relationships, personal relationships, how to run a practice. Most of it's been good. And I can't really distill all that down into a half an hour, but I thought I'd ask you just kind of a broad question for a segment I'm going to entitle, Things Tommy Wishes He Knew Then That He Knows Now.
Well, like I said, and it's been pointed out, I'm on the cusp of my 50th year, and I'm on the sunset side of the mountain, and I realize that, but it gives me a perspective that I really appreciate. And if I have given you some good advice, I'm happy I was able to do that, because I don't set out to do it, but I do have a lot of
Well, I will say this, Tommy, in your case, it's been a situation of, if you can't be a great example, be a horrible warning. And you can learn either way.
Yeah, you want to be infamous if you're not going to be famous.
But as things I wish I'd known then, we didn't have the code of civility or whatever it was. So people sometimes took, representing your client zealously a little too far. And so what I would say, at least back then, one of the things that you need to learn is that if you're going to get in a fight, take your tie off. Because if they grab you by the tie, they're going to wail on you. And that was something you needed to learn real early.
Now fight with the tie on.
I still take my tie off every time I go into a depot, just in case.
The other thing I would say is you never underestimate somebody with a speech defect. I've lost to 2 stutterers and 1 lisp. And there's something about it. The juries just like it. It's, they
Captivated.
they respect them. They're trying to do something in which talking and expressing yourself, being persuasive is important, and they will kick your ass. There was a great lawyer here, Henry Giesel. He did defense work, and
Giesel, Barker, Line.
yeah. And Henry was so smart, and but he had a lisp. So I was trying a case against him one time, and it was a crummy case, which is why I was trying it. And the husband was driving, and the wife hurt her back, and the kids in the back claimed that were her too. And the husband said, I want to have a claim for consortium. And I said, please don't do that. I said, we got a weak case anyway, and if I have to come in there and ask that you be compensated for money for, sexual issues.
So let me make a dumb footnote for we've got a broad variety of listeners. Loss of consortium claim, that's when a plaintiff says their relationship with their spouse in the bedroom isn't what it used to be.
Exactly.
Because they've suffered some kind of an injury.
That's right. Okay. Exactly.
Means sex.
Yeah.
Bill, this is a G-rated. This is a family.
Talking about sex here.
It's a family-oriented podcast.
So anyway, he made me required that I put him on, say he was claiming loss of sexual favors, as I think I was put.
Told you, Kyle.
So when Henry Giesel is arguing the case, and I'm going to try to mimic him, and it's not going to be as bad or as good as he was.
I have to cut this.
But he said, ladies and gentlemen, he said, we come to the next issue, loss of consortium. He said, I was talking to my wife, Alice, and you don't know Alice, but she said, Henry, what's this case about? And I said, well, Mr. Cummings says he's claiming money and loss for loss of sexual favors. And Alice looked at me and she said, Henry, are they paying for that at the courthouse?
That's solid. That is good closing argument.
What do you do with that?
Yeah. You got to stand up and rebuttal like,
That's pretty great.
Yeah, so along those lines, we talk a lot about trial lawyers, famous trial lawyers, and it's typically the plaintiff's lawyers are the ones that gain the most fame. But I'm sure you encounter, besides Mr. Giesel, some very good defense lawyers. Who are some that some of the more legendary classic guys?
the least shittiest is like how I like to say it.
I mean, Bill, the truth of the matter is the really good ones weren't shitty.
No, I know. There's a lot that I respect.
You're teasing, but the truth of the matter is the guys that were good, you respected them. And I think there was a level of respect for what we did. They weren't, they were doing their job. But, I would say that Dick Miller over at Baker Botts, he was the lawyer that he was from Oklahoma. He was a Marine and he went to Harvard. And he sounded like a Marine from Oklahoma, but he tried the Pennzoil case representing the defendant and lost that, $13 billion. But he was a great lawyer. And I would put Henry Giesel in that case. Henry represented a lot of smaller, he represented the Yellow Cab and Allstate and the lower level of defendants, but he was really good. Let me think about that. Nobody really jumps to mind right now.
What's your favorite trial experience? What's one you just knocked out of the park and killed it?
Or didn't?
Well, there's been a few of those, but we're not going to talk about those. I don't want to talk about those.
Seabell.
I don't. Well, we could. And this kind of gets back to the chicken shit, the defense lawyers. So I had a case that we offer no money, zero money. And the case tries real well. I had a black client that a computer had rolled off a bed of a truck, and he was paraplegic. Great guy. And offered no money. Well, we try the case, and it tries real well. And so as soon as we got through arguing the case, the defense lawyer came up. He said, I hate to do this now, but, we're going to offer you $1 million. So I go out.
What year was this? Trying to gauge how much $1 million.
Yeah, no, me too.
Let me think about that. That would have been about 91 or 90.
It's a lot of money. That's a lot of money.
A lot of money. So I take my African-American client out. He's in a wheelchair, big guy. And I said, Lois, I hate this, but they put $1 million on the table to settle your case. And surprised me, and the defense lawyers are down the hall watching this. It surprised me, he just started crying like a baby. I mean, it was just really crying all over. And he said, why don't you tell him this old black man's not going to jump for any piece of change? So I told him, I'm not going to tell him that. I'm going to tell them we're thinking about it. I said, because when I tell them that, they're going to come up a little more. And then they're going to come up a little more. And all they're going to do is terrorize us. If you're willing to take a verdict, that's what I want to do. He said, let's take a verdict. So the next day, we were in the old building with the Harris County Library. So I told Tanner, who was with me, I said, go down there and tell me where I am, but don't talk so much. I'm going to be up in the library. So he comes up at lunch. We said, nothing happening. We end up the day. So the next day, I'm starting to get a little nervous. I'm a little bit worried. So same thing.
The jury's out.
The jury is out.
Got it. Okay.
And they're asking Tanner, where's Fibich? Where's Fibich? Where's Fibich? Oh, I forgot this part of the story. Before the end of when jury got the case, the judge said, bring the jury in for final argument. And the defense lawyer said, Your Honor, I've got something I want to put on the record. Okay. Said, we offered Mr. Fibich $1.2 million. Not true. Just wanted to do that for the client. And he hasn't even given us a courtesy of a reply. And when the first jury walks through that door, that offer is withdrawn. And Eugene Chambers leaned forward and said, you know what? I bet Tommy understands that. So anyway, now we're out. So the second day that the verdict is out, we end up running into the defense lawyers at lunch. Now, I hadn't talked to them since they would close the final argument. And the lawyer that was such the prick ran up to me and says, you owe the courtesy of a reply. You owe us a reply. And I said, here's my reply. Give me my mediation money back, and then I'll tell you to stick it up your ass. And so we had just gotten our lunch, and somebody called, so we got a verdict, so we went back. And that verdict was $8 million.
Oh,
so
wow.
That was a good day.
That's not bad.
It was a good day.
And take a side note for my personal interest. So you mentioned mediation, but prior to really the 90s, there was really no such thing as mediation. So how would y'all settled cases. So how would that work? Just lawyers just calling the phone or having drinks or?
Peter, once again, I don't want to sound like I'm older than Methuselah, but I like the way we used to do it. We would sit down and say, hey, look, I want to resolve the case. And you just do it mano a mano. I mean, it was just, you sit down and say, I'll take this, I'll take that. And, you'd try to do it any way that you could. And for the most part, it worked. Then somebody came with the idea of mediation, and I think it was the judges that needed to clean up their docket, and it was starting to work, and then it became a requirement, and now it works, a lot better than I think it used to work. I like the old way of doing it. Now, I will tell you a settlement case that I had with a great lawyer in San Antonio by the name of Ricardo Cedillo. Don't ever go to San Antonio without Ricardo being on your side of the table. And he and I had tried a case a long time ago and got along really well. So I'm over there picking a jury, getting ready to try a fin case. And Ricardo walks in and he says, I got good news. I said, great. I said, what is it? He said, I've been asked to represent the defendant. I said, okay. He said, I've got bad news too. I'm here to represent the defendant. So he said, let's talk after this hearing. So we had a hearing. We walk out. Ricardo says, let me tell you something. He said, I have too much respect for you. And I know that respect is reciprocal for us to kind of go back and forth. And you tell me what you'll take. And you don't really mean it. I'll tell you what I've got. And you know I won't mean it. He said, so here's how we're going to handle this if you'll agree to it. You go to your hotel tonight, figure out what you want. Let's meet for breakfast, and you give me the number. And I will pay it or I won't pay it. But no matter what happens and we don't sell it, we never talk about settlement again. Okay. I didn't sleep the whole night because I wanted to get as much money as I could, but I didn't want to go so far that I had to try the case and never mention settlement again. So the next day we're in San Antonio on the river eating a Mexican breakfast, which was fabulous. And he said, okay, well, what's the number? Yeah, I mean, my mouth got sticky. I didn't even want to put it out at that time. I finally told him, I said, well, it's $8 million. And I'll never forget, Ricardo was kind of playing with his refried beans and kind of dipping his deal in there. And he looks up and he said, can I get you the money in 30 days?
Yeah. That's when you go, damn it. Should ask for 9. Damn it.
He had 10 to work with.
Yeah. But, Bill, you're probably right. But as soon as I got out of sight, I jumped up and clicked my heel.
Hey, I'll take it.
That's fantastic.
I've often thought about trying to do that again with a defense lawyer, but it's a lot of pressure to pick a number and you either take it or leave it.
It's kind of like baseball arbitration kind of concept.
And they got to go back and get authority all the time now and all that. Yeah.
Well, that's another question. So you handle high value cases. Back in the old, now, of course, insurance adjusters are the ones that are typically at that level having that conversation. They just kind of jump. But back then, was it the lawyers that you were dealing with only or mix?
Peter, I really hadn't thought about this, but I don't think we ever talked to adjusters. I mean, the lawyer would go get the authority and come talk to you. Now, that changed over time when in the bigger case you got, the more you would have somebody from the company there. But for the most part, it was the lawyers. And, back then, Houston was a small town. We didn't have all these big firms coming in from Dallas and everywhere else. And so you got to know one another. I mean, Giesel, Barker, Stone, and Lyman. I mean, Charlie Lyman was my good friend. Jim Barker was my good friend. We would fight hard, try cases together. And so if we had another case, you develop camaraderie with your opposing counsel if you don't have somebody that's been unprofessional in how they treated you. So you would develop a relationship, and that allowed you to be a little more honest. And sometimes, they'd say, hey, look, I know you want this. I'll try to go get it, but I may not be able to. And you just have to rely upon but you knew them better. I mean, I don't know now if there's any case that I have with a lawyer on the other side that I've had previously, whereas, 30 years ago, you had it all the time.
It's wild to me. I run into these two types of lawyers a lot. Those that need to keep so many files on their desk as a defense lawyer that they are intentionally obstructive to resolving a case. See that a fair amount. And I see a lot of lawyers on the other side who simply say, the adjuster makes these decisions. There's no point arguing to me. I'm not allowed to decide anything. And when people do that to me now, I just take them at their word. And when they call me up and they want to try to get something resolved with the case, I say, well, you've already told me you're not allowed to go to the bathroom unless an adjuster tells you it's okay. So I don't know why you're calling here. If you tell me you've got some authority to make decisions, fine.
I don't even use the word adjuster. I say you have a non-lawyer calling the shots.
But I will also say this. I have dealt with some adjusters on bigger cases who were just fantastic to work with. They knew the law. And, I just like being put in touch with the actual decision maker instead of this patty cake nonsense about why you're not allowed to make decisions. It makes me nuts.
I have one case right now where I have that, where I have a number in my head. We haven't even filed it yet, but they became on notice, and it's a bigger defamation case. And the other side happens to be a very good friend of mine. And so I said, hey, let's see if we can get this done early. He said, okay. And he said, you tell me what you want. And I trusted him that he wasn't going to burn me. I said, this isn't something you can work off of. And he said, I wouldn't. So I said, this is what I want. I'll give you, he said, give me a demand. And I said, do you want a demand for this number? Or would it make it easier if I make it a little bit smaller for you to go get what I want? He said, give me the smaller one. I can work with that. And that's where we're at right now. I'll let you know in 2 weeks if it works.
Well, I mean, I think what has happened over time, and that is that the defense lawyers want to make as much money as the lawyers can. They're always going to be jealous of what they think we make. Now, I think they overestimate what we do, but, you know, they all feel like they've got to make more money. And I had a lawyer at Bonham Carey and Fox when I was doing defense work, and we would go in for the year end and how are we going to do next year and look at all that kind of stuff. And he'd say, well, I'm going to bring in $1,400,000. All he did was insurance fence wreck. So how would you know that? He said, because I've got, 48 files and I'm not going to settle any one of them until I build $8,000 a file. 8,000 times whatever the number is comes to that. I said, I can tell you to the penny what I'm going to make. Now I thought, well, that's pretty bad, which is another reason I left it.
Here comes the $8 million verdict, though, and you already made more than that one for.
What kind of stuff you handling now, recently? You're not still doing single event car wreck cases, I don't think. And if you are, my next question is, why aren't you referring those to me?
Well, I just got a check from you this week. There.
Cheers.
Cheers. and you're going to get them all. But,
all right.
I'm doing...
Sorry, Bill.
Hey, it happens.
I've been representing Harris County on the opioid litigation, and that's getting wrapped up. And then I'm doing some human trafficking. I represent women that have been trafficked, and there's a federal law which says that if you facilitate human trafficking, you're jointly and severally liable.
It's the hotel statute, right? We have a couple of those right now. Yeah.
So
great law.
Get this. So the real issue in those cases is, does the hotel know that the lady's being trafficked when she comes in? And it's hard to do because some guy may be in there with his girlfriend and she's going to be younger. Some guy may be in there with a prostitute. Prostitution's not trafficking, so the big issue is, how do you prove what the hotel knew? So we got an email in discovery last week, and it involved Red Roof Inns, and it's always the smaller, least expensive hotels because, quite frankly, the traffickers don't look for high count sheets and
Coffee.
Sounds like they're running an efficient business.
So anyway,
Immoral.
This email was from a regional vice president of Red Roof to some other regional vice presidents in Georgia. And he said that the home office was surprised at how much money they had started making. And they want to know why. And he said, well, I put in this snack bar, where you can go in and, get Fritos and a candy bar or whatever it is. And he said, now, if they ask me why that has made so much money, I'm going to tell them it's because the pimps and whores like snacks with their smokes.
That's in an email?
This email.
Ooh. I feel strongly, if you work at a company and the word regional is part of your title, you should not be allowed to email.
It's a bullshit title. Yeah.
It's bad. It's just enough authority to say something terrible.
Well, the greatest email that I think, other than this one just came about, but when we were doing the fen litigation, which was a diet drug, it was a great masterwork. When the drug, there was a study that came out of Europe, and it showed that it causes an incredible increase in primary pulmonary hypertension. So this pharmaceutical company that had made hundreds and hundreds of millions on this diet drug that didn't work, said, when the study comes out, if you want the money back, send us your prescription and we'll reimburse you your prescriptive costs that wasn't covered by insurance. So some lady in the accounting department writes this email. Does this mean I'm going to spend the rest of my life writing checks to fat people because of some silly lung disease? Now, I'm going to tell you, that's about as good as it gets. So I'm trying the first fen case, and Barbara Radnowski at Vincent & Elkins was the local lawyer for Williams & Golly. So we offer it into evidence, and she argues that's the low-level musings of a person in the accounting department that does not reflect the corporate mentality of this company, and the property value is so far outweighed by all the prejudice. So the judge sustained it. Oh, I'm pissed. So I turned to Mike LeBron and I said, leak this to the press, which he does very, very well, because that night on the news, this was a big first case.
First ever FinFin case?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And so, and really being watched. So on the news, it shows FinFin case, da-da-da-da. And then it puts this particular email up there. Does this mean I'm going to spend the rest of my life writing checks to fat people for some silly lung disease? So the next day, B&E comes in, and they're all hot and bothered. They come in. Back then, this was before, really before computers. So they've got the video from all three stations which showed it. So they go in and show this to the court. And, of course, every time they show something, they look at me. And I'm just standing there. And and then they focus, and it's plaintiff exhibit number 1.
Oh, yeah, they know where it came from.
And so when we finished the hearing, I said, Mike, next time I tell you to leak some of the press, do you mind taking the sticker off?
Hey, but FinFin, we put the dye in diet drug.
So let me ask a question. I hoard Zantac, the kind that causes cancer.
Mm-hmm.
I call it the good Zantac.
You hoard it?
It's like the lemons of Quaaludes.
But it's super effective. And I don't take it in high doses, but, it's better than that.
I don't think small doses are okay.
So do you have, like, a warehouse full of the FenFen? Is that, like, you don't have, like, a good FenFen hook
Plug.
Do not. But there's a new diabetic drug.
Ozempic. Yeah, it's
FinFen. You heard it here first?
Now, I've said this too much. I mean,
Hold on. We got to hear from the
the guru.
guru.
I mean, I had the only FinFin case on trial at the time that it was pulled from the market. And I'm telling you, there's never going to be a diet drug that works. There's never going to be one.
Without a bunch of complications.
Yeah, like cocaine
It's going to work.
doesn't work.
I mean, but yeah, that's what.
Well, it does work. It's just
And so
very serious side effects.
FinFin was, not within prescribing label, and this drug's not within prescribing label. And I'm telling you, it's just a matter of time, and it's all off label. It's all for unapproved use.
So I saw that the generic versions of Ozempic, the FDA came out and said, hey, these do not fall under the 510K pre-approval. They didn't go through pre-market approvals. We don't know what's in them.
For weight loss?
Yeah, it's the generic version of Ozempic. So that's a big
generic version to be on the market that's supposed to be, equivalent.
Right.
Pharmaceutically equivalent. So you would think they're the same, but I'm just telling you.
So I'm going to start sending out all my fee agreement to all my friends that are on Ozempic. I know a bunch of lawyers taking Ozempic. I'm going to get them signed up.
So let's call some names out.
You can sell from their Instagram.
Yeah. You mentioned that you represent Harris County and the opioids. I saw that Walmart had a big settlement. Is that inclusive nationwide, or is that just
Well, yeah. I mean,
it was like it was a few $100 million.
yeah, unbelievable amounts of money, but unbelievable amount of harm. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really absolutely incredible. And I think the litigation would have been fun had it not been so big, but it's so massive. I mean, every county, every city, every state, every insurance company, every health care plan, and we're plaintiffs. And so they've been brought to their knees now. And in the Walmart or Walgreens, whichever one you saw, just happened in Harris County, in Texas.
Yeah, so Walmart.
All of those are settling, and they settle with the state here as opposed to the government. And there's a MDL in Cleveland.
Yep.
So,
Ohio?
Texas.
Well, there's nothing all right with Ohio.
Well, that's what I was going to say is Cleveland, Ohio. That's pretty impressive for Cleveland, Texas.
So you're kind of partnering on that case with the Attorney General's office.
yeah, and that's pretty interesting.
What are your thoughts on him?
Well,
The artist formerly known as.
I think that he's awful. I think he's guilty of all kinds of wrongs. I think he ought to be convicted for the crimes for which he was charged when he ascended to that office. It's incredible to me that people in the state of Texas vote for someone that's indicted. I don't know how you defending him, as one of your prior guests did, when
Cage match.
when you got people, leaving the office because he's doing unethical things. I mean, it's a disgrace that we have the highest legal person in our state being indicted, who's been avoiding successfully trial for a long time.
I tip my hat to it. It's impressive.
I don't know. I don't want to tip my hat to him to do anything
Fair.
except get out of town.
Well, we got about 33 more days, and we're going to get this process started.
That's gonna be lawyer like soap like no one's gonna do any work.
Lawyer,
That's going on.
Like,
Yeah.
you're going to get us front row tickets, right?
I'm trying.
All right.
I want to sit in a suite.
You
Snacks.
Rusty Hart is a friend of mine, and I think he's a good lawyer, and I'm glad he's representing our
Dick's with him too, right? Dick Aaron? That's the other one, right?
he's even better. But often said
Heard it here first.
that I would rather run with the Bulls of Pamplona than get between Rusty and a TV camera. So when you put Busby and Rusty in the same room with a TV camera, it's going to be a shit show.
On top of that,
I can't wait. I can't
like,
wait.
the rule, they made up the rules, right? There's no rules. And so I guess Dan Patrick put out a gag order, and we'll talk about that in our next one. But how do you enforce that? I mean, is there contempt of the Senate?
The sergeant of arms rounds up all the interns, and they go and they tackle the offender, and they put him in Senate prison.
Yeah.
Something tells me those interns are going to be in full Kevlar with ARs.
Yeah.
It just sounds like something they would do.
That group of lawyers you just mentioned, they know how to operate in a courtroom within rules. That everyone knows.
Who you talking about, Peter?
Well, I'm talking about
Tony,
Aaron,
Rusty.
Rusty, and Busby, and Cogdill.
You're going to
Yeah,
They know.
don't throw Dan.
They don't.
Hell, Harriet O'Neill's on there too.
Yeah, she's going there. But these guys usually, even with rules, it's hard to keep all of them in a little line. Can you imagine when these rules are very loosey-goosey?
There's no rules.
Yeah, I mean,
The rules were like, there's like 6.
Yeah.
It's like that.
Nothing to the face, no biting, no eye gout.
No bruises where people can see him in a short sleeve shirt.
Can't throw sand at people.
Yep. And his wife can be a voter.
Well,
Right.
it's like that Butch Cassidy Sundance Kid. There's no rules in a knife fight.
That's right.
And this is going to be a knife fight.
So I want to go back to something you said earlier. You were talking about being harassed by the cops.
No, I was arrested by the cops. I
Arrested?
was put in a room and said, "Tommy, you seem like a nice kid.
Why?
Your compadres have already told us what happened. You sitting in here lying to me means you're going to go to jail for a long time. Now, why don't you tell me what happened?" And, when you're 17 years old and scared to death, it's a formidable power that they're bringing on you. I've never understood, or I do now understand, why people confess to things that they didn't do. Okay, I'll say I did it. Maybe you'll let me out of here. And so go ahead.
So I want to bring this full circle. You've got, I've met at least 2 of your sons, both of which
I hope those are the only ones.
both of which I know you're very proud. One of them is a lawyer that we're all friends with, Greg. But your other son, why don't you tell us what his job is?
Well, he's a policeman in League City.
Comes full circle.
He's a cop, and I'm very, very proud of him. He has gotten an award recently for valor. There was a man that went into a bar ditch and was shooting randomly at people. He got there. There were other officers there, but he was the one that decided he was going to get close. He was shot at and ended up, the guy had a light and he was shining it. My son Todd thought, well, next time he pulls that light up, I'm going to shoot his hand off. And he did. And he got all kinds of awards for valor. The reason he's a cop is he sees things black and white. There is no gray area. Now, that's good and bad, but there is no gray area. You're either right or wrong. And, although, I can see the errors that policemen make and have seen it personally, I'm really proud of the job he does.
Good.
We really are kind of running out of time. You've got kind of a hard stop here in the next 10, 15 minutes. Let me run through a couple of quick questions with you. Greatest Longhorn. So Peter's son plays for the Longhorns. The three of us went to UT. I know you're a big football fan. I think we probably all run into each other at games. Greatest Longhorn you've ever seen live and in person.
Wow.
Because you go back to the James Street days. So
Really kind of,
Yeah, but he was there for the Vince days.
and that too, yeah.
you know,
And Ricky.
yeah, I will say this, that when Street died, he was the second most popular Longhorn, only behind Earl. I mean, when people said, we want somebody to come speak, or we want an autograph picture, or we want something for the athletic department, number one was Earl, number two was Street. And I'm kind of inclined to agree with that two things. But, once again, when you've been in this on earth as long as I have, I go back to Tommy Nova's days. Tommy had a 22-inch neck. He was redheaded, and he was a badass. And he was the number one draft choice when he went to the pros, signed by the Atlanta Falcons. So, Novus, Street, and Earl, those were pretty good. But James had a magic. I mean, James and I dated roommates or suite mates at Trident House. And we had to take the girls in, and they had hours. I think it was like 11 o'clock on weeknights and 2 o'clock on the weekends. So we'd be kissing our girlfriends goodnight. So I got to know James, and he was just a great guy. And
Was this the eventual Mrs. Street, who's a wonderful lady?
No, second wife.
yeah,
Speaking of Tridelts, Kent Schaefer talked to us last time about representing Farrah Fawcett, one of the most famous Tridelts. Was she there when you were there?
she was.
Was she the girlfriend you were kissing next to James?
I tried to just, we could have just left it there.
Be my hero.
Yeah.
She took Farrah Fawcett out.
I could tell you, but somebody that would be watching this.
All right.
So here is what happened. I had a roommate. We were living at the Sigma Chi house, which was right across the street from the Trident House, and we just gotten there. And so my roommate had tried to fix up this horrible dorm room. I mean, fraternity house room. So he'd gotten this baseball player ballpark. Ugliest thing you've ever seen. This guy stolen and batting and sliding. Horrible. But it was cheap, and it covered what was there before, and probably was an improvement. So I get there, and he said, Fibs, he says, you're not going to believe the girl I saw yesterday. Tell me about her. I remember we're in twin beds. He gets up, swings his feet over. He said, I don't know that I can find the words. Said she was just beautiful. He said, I've never seen anything like it. This hair, she had a great body, the most incredible smile. And I said, well, what was her name? And he said, Farrah Fawcett. She didn't have a cool name. I said, well, we're going to have a hard time keeping her out of room 6 if she sees this wallpaper. She never made it to room 6.
Never made it up to room 6. Well, she missed out.
Yeah. But she was, as big as the University of Texas was, everybody knew who she was. I mean, she was that truly striking. I mean, just unbelievable.
I think maybe the next time somebody asks me who's the greatest Longhorn I've ever seen, I think if they don't put any other qualifiers, you just got to say Farrah Fawcett.
Well, I was on some program, and somebody was asked, who are the 3 greatest people that ever walked the face of the earth? And the guy said, William Shakespeare, Farrah Fawcett, and Willie Mays. That's hard to argue with.
Not a bad list.
Yeah, so I cut you. So you and James Street had dates with the suite mates.
Well, we were dating them, so I got to know James pretty well. To know him is to just, you can't help but like him. And he was such a genuine, sincere guy, and he just had a positivity about him. I've never seen anything like it. But,
Well, he's known for his football, but he was an excellent baseball player
he's
as
a
well.
great baseball player. And here's one of the things, Peter, you may not even know this, but James was drafted by the Detroit Tigers. He was a pitcher, just like his son Houston. And he was an All-American pitcher. One funny story, after they won the national championship, he dropped out of school because he could then go the next semester and keep his eligibility. So he drops out in the fall of whatever year that was. And the next year, he's playing baseball. And they come here to Rice. And James is on the mound, and he's having trouble getting the ball over. And Bibb Falk walks out. And the Rice students, to their credit, were pretty humorous. He said, use small words. Use
Kids.
David, great
Nerds.
I mean, I got to tell you, in terms of between the University of Texas and the practice of law in Houston, Texas, I mean, I have seen some characters, and I mean that in way, good characters. I mean, I told you, mentioned Jamel the other day, but he was a little different in the sense that he was kind of a bully. Well, no, it's not kind of. He was a bully, but he worked for him. And there's a story that I'd like to tell because I think it's funny that shows his personality to a T. But there was a lawsuit between Ricky de Portanova, who was an Italian heir to the Cullen fortune. He was married.
Was he like a count or a duke or something?
Come on, Kyle. Jesus.
Designation.
Disrespect.
So anyway, Joe's taking his deposition, and he says, state your name for the record. And this guy who said his life revolved around sex, sunshine. That was it. Sex, something in sunshine. Anyway, Joe says, state your name for the record. He says, Baron Ricky de Portanova. And Joe sat there and he said, well, I fought a war so this country wouldn't have a monarch. So I'm not going to...
Hold on, was Joe in the Revolutionary War?
No, he was...
Probably. You don't know that.
But anyway, he said, I fought a war so we wouldn't have to have monarchs in this country. So I'm not going to call you Baron. And for the record, you can call me Mr. Jamel, and I'll just call you ass off.
Oh, that was back when we could have fun on the record. I missed that.
You can't do that today. That was the good old days.
You can. You just got to pull out the checkbook.
I saw Joe Jamel try what I think was his last med-mal case. I was an intern in probate court 1 with Russell Austin, and Judge Austin told me I needed to cut class for the next week and come watch Joe Jamel try a case. And it was masterful. I watched Joe Jamel and I think his paralegal with one yellow pad, usually with a Diet Coke and a cheese sandwich and an apple.
Ooh.
And on the other side was about 16 defense lawyers defended every hospital and every doctor's group in the city of Houston. And he would, just fantastic. He would lay the improper predicate for a document intentionally in front of the jury, and then you'd get 16 idiots object at the same time.
Just because they could.
Object. And Joe would turn to the jury and say, nope, this is important. Was this kept in the course and scope at your employment as a record keeper? It was. Judge, this should be admitted.
Wow.
It's so admitted. I mean, he was playing them like puppets. It was just fantastic.
He was special. But, Houston, I said that we used to have great best lawyers, and Bill said we still do. And there's something about Houston that has created that environment in which there really are great lawyers. And I've had the privilege of being in pharmaceutical litigation to try cases across the country, and particularly good defense lawyers, Williams and Conley and people like that.
You got good resumes.
They're pretty tough, let me tell you. But bottom line is that there's something about Houston, and it's not Dallas particularly. There's good lawyers in Dallas. And I don't really know what it is. I think that if I had to speculate, Houston is a can-do city. And, I think take the Astrodome, which at the time it opened was the 8th wonder of the world. Let's talk about that. So they built the Astrodome, and everybody said, how do you play baseball in a building? You can't do that. Well, of course, they built it, in this gigantic sphere. And so all of a sudden the players can't catch balls because the girders are causing shadows. So for the first couple of games, people wore batting helmets in the field so you wouldn't get hit in the head. So they said, we got to solve that. Okay. So they painted the roof. Okay, well, that solved that, but the grass died. That's how they invented.
Can't grow grass under a blanket.
Houston, you've got a problem. And we solve problems, and there's something about that can-do attitude. I mean, if you go back, I don't know about today, but if you go back among those great lawyers, Racehorse was a Marine in World War II. Jamel was a Marine in World War II. All of those guys of the generation before me were veterans that had fought for this country. And I think they had a comfort about who they represented and who they were, unlike some good lawyers. But, it shocks me how good the lawyers are here, because I'll be in a matter with other lawyers in other states that do primarily mass tort work and MDLs, and they don't know what they're doing.
The first pitcher that threw a game on the new AstroTurf, afterwards, after the game, he got interviewed, and they said, what did you think of the new grass? And he said, haven't had a chance to smoke any of it.
Is it J.R. Richards?
Yeah. No, I think, Tommy, you're right, because if you've been in battle and your life's on the line, and you come back and try in a case, what's the worst that's going to happen? You lose some money.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just
I
money.
think that's an interesting observation, because I never have really thought about that in that context. But I will say that the lawyers back then, they fought hard and they were damn good, and they did what they had to do to prepare their case. But they also enjoyed it. There was something about doing what they did that was also equally fun. Now, today, it's all about rules. It's all about meet and confer. It's all about the interlocutory appeals. It's just not the same. And I don't see the same stature and ability to enjoy what you're doing at the same time that you're representing people. And so that may be it. I mean, the lawyers today that grow up, I include myself pretty much in that category, didn't have to make the sacrifices those people did. And when you come up a lot easier, you just don't have the same strength of values they.
Tommy, I know we got to get you out of here on time. We have a dirty verdict questionnaire that we pose. No peeking.
Came up with it.
To all of our...
Has not been vetted.
It's not been vetted. So if you'll indulge us, we've got 10 questions for Tommy Fibich. You ready?
Lightning round.
Tommy Fibich, what is your favorite word, profane or otherwise?
Encourage.
That's fucking encouraging.
What is your least favorite word?
I have some phrases. My least favorite word, shit.
Okay. What sound or noise do you love?
Tinkling of ice in a glass.
Fair. What sound or noise do you hate? Last call.
Yeah. What sound or noise do I hate? I'm a little tired of horns. Houston seems to be a town of impatient drivers.
Aggressive.
Actually, if you were here at the wrong time, Kyle's building has a habit of running the alarms right when our podcast starts. That one would
That's
be
pretty terrible.
Yeah.
If you were reincarnated after you slip the surly bonds of Earth and come back as a plant or animal,
They're playing that horn.
what would it be?
Well, these are tough questions.
You can't say Farrah Fawcett.
You can.
I don't know that I want to be fair. I mean,
Lee Majors, maybe.
so I would probably want to be a rhinoceros, because as a plaintiff lawyer, we got to have thick skin, and being that big and mean, you could kick the shit out of some people. So I'd probably want to come back as a rhinoceros.
What profession, other than attorney, would you like to attempt?
Sperm donor.
Fill her up.
What profession would you not like to attempt? Bill, you're done. Cut his mic.
Hey, I lasted longer than I thought.
The profession I would least like to do,
Yeah. Family.
you know,
President.
that's close. Probably, politician.
Yeah. What
Agreed.
trait do you most admire in opposing counsel?
I've seen so damn few, it's hard for me to pick one, but I would say honesty. I mean, sincerity. Sincerity's probably better than
He picks the rare one. Okay.
What trait do you most admire in a judge?
the ones that really have an affection for Tommy.
Sure. What trait do you hope others see reflected in your work?
That's a hard one too. It's easy for me to sit here. As I said, I'm on the sunset side of the mountain where you guys are on the sunrise side. So that does cause me sometimes to look back over, what I've done. And I hope that people realize that I always tried to fight fair, and I tried to do what was best and followed the rules and was honest. And at the end of the day, and at least in the practice of law, that we would shake hands and there would be respect.
Tommy, that's all we have for you. Can't thank you enough for spending some time with us. Any famous last words for the Dirty Verdict?
Well, damn, Kyle, you're rushing me here.
You can stay as long as you want. You said you had an appointment at 5:30. I think you should cancel and stay here and drink tequila.
Just be glad he's not Ukrainian you.
No last words. I mean, you guys get it out of other people, and you do a great job on your program. I wasn't really familiar with it until I started watching it, but this is a good venue for people to express themselves among other good lawyers that have, and what happens in our city, what happens in our community. I mean, I thought my dad was a petroleum engineer, and, he didn't celebrate when he made a well. I mean, that was good, but he didn't celebrate. People whose fathers did other things, don't come home and celebrate that something good happened that they made happen. And there's a camaraderie among lawyers. There's a camaraderie that I feel at this table among those of us that do what we do. And I think that's really, really cool. So, I really encourage this forum for doing what you do, because it gets people, particularly when you're pouring this tequila, it gets people to express
it's apple juice
in a way that is open and honest.
Well, we started this for conversations exactly like this.
Yeah.
We really
It's a good one.
you coming on and sharing some of your stories and wisdom, for sure.
And you're welcome back anytime you like.
Anytime.
Thanks, guys.
Kyle by the booze.
All right, with that, we'll conclude this very special edition of the Dirty Very Podcast. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Tommy.
Thanks for joining us this week. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also visit our website at www.dirtyverdict.com. If you are interested in coming on as a guest or have a story idea, please email us at story@dirtyverdict.com.